Have you ever wondered if what you see, hear, or feel is truly real or just what your brain wants you to believe? Imagine you're walking through your neighborhood. The sky is overcast, the pavement slightly damp. You see a neighbor smile at you, but something about it feels off cold, even condescending. You walk away certain they dislike you. But are you sure that's true? Or did your brain just fabricate a story to match an emotion you haven't even fully processed? Here's a disturbing truth. Your brain lies to you, constantly. And what's worse, it does so in ways that feel perfectly natural, even comforting. From subtle distortions of memory to elaborate constructions of false logic, the mind is a master illusionist. It presents a version of reality not as it is, but as it needs to be for you to feel safe, right, and in control. The most troubling part? You rarely, if ever, question it. This story is not about paranoia. It's about peeling back the layers of your most trusted mental processes and asking, what if my mind isn't showing me the truth? What if some of the most deeply held facts about myself and the world are, in fact, illusions? Beautiful, useful, evolutionarily adaptive, but lies nonetheless. Over the next few sections, we'll journey into the twisted corridors of human cognition. You'll discover how your brain quietly edits reality, constructs fantasies, and wraps them in the warm blanket of belief. From illusions of memory and control to unconscious biases and false narratives, we'll explore how even the most rational minds are led astray. Not because you're broken, but because you're human. Ready to dive in? We like to think of perception as a window, clear, direct, and truthful. You look outside, and you see the world exactly as it is, or so you assume. But in truth, perception is more like a painting done by an unreliable artist, using memory for paint, emotion for brushstrokes, and evolution as its instructor. Let's start with your eyes. At the back of each eye is a blind spot area where the optic nerve exits the retina and where no photoreceptor cells exist. Technically, you shouldn't be able to see anything in that spot, and yet you never notice it. Why? Because your brain seamlessly fills in the gap using surrounding visual information. It invents a reality where one doesn't exist and does it so convincingly that you'll bet your life you're seeing everything. But that's just the beginning. The brain receives a chaotic, incomplete stream of raw data from the senses. It then filters, interprets, and reconstructs that information into a coherent experience. This process is too fast to be examined in real time, and yet it's also dangerously fallible. Shadows can become threats. A flash of movement may be seen as a figure. We mistake illusions for reality and then build beliefs upon them. Consider optical illusions. The famous checker shadow illusion by Edward Adelson shows two squares A and B that appear to be different shades, yet, when measured, they are the exact same color. Your brain is compensating for what it assumes must be a shadow and adjusting brightness accordingly. It's not making a mistake, it's making a judgment call based on context, experience, and survival. This is not a bug, it's a feature. Your ancestors didn't need to perceive objective reality, they needed to survive. And survival meant recognizing patterns quickly, sometimes even where none existed. If you mistook a stick for a snake, you lived to tell the tale. If you mistook a snake for a stick, well, you didn't. Evolution favors the cautious brain, the fast-reacting brain, not necessarily the accurate one. Now apply this concept to daily life. You walk into a room and immediately sense bad vibes. Your mind quickly scans the faces, the posture, the tones of voice. Within seconds, you form a judgment. They don't like me. But this is not pure perception. It's a mixture of fear, memory, expectation, and a powerful psychological need to protect your sense of self. Maybe someone just looked away because they were nervous. Maybe the silence had nothing to do with you. Still, your brain fills in the gaps with a story, and you believe it. This automatic storytelling doesn't stop at sight or sound. It infiltrates touch, taste, smell, and even time. People who undergo traumatic events often describe time slowing down. Neurologically, their brain is recording more detail, making the moment seem longer in retrospect. It's not that time changed that the brain changed its perception of it to encode what it deemed important for future survival. So, when someone says, "I know what I saw," take it with a grain of salt. They may be sincere, but they're also human. Because perception is not reality. Perception is an informed guess. And that guess, while often good enough, is not the truth. Somewhere deep inside your brain, A storyteller is at work spinning threads of logic, cause, and effect, good guys and bad guys, to make sense of everything that happens. It doesn't matter whether the events are random or the emotions ambiguous, the storyteller craves order, and it will invent it if it must. This is what psychologists call the narrative bias, or mind's tendency to construct and cling to stories, even when those stories aren't true. Take, for example, the famous split brain experiments conducted in the 1960s. In these studies, patients with severed connections between their brain hemispheres were shown different images to each eye information that each hemisphere processed separately. When one image, say, a chicken claw, was shown to the left hemisphere and another a snowy driveway to the right, the patients were asked to point to a related image with each hand. One hand pointed to a chicken, the other to a snow shovel. When asked to explain this contradiction, the left hemisphere, which had no access to the snowy image, fabricated a story on the spot. I picked the shovel because you need to clean up after chickens. There was no confusion, no hesitation. The brain didn't say, I don't know. It said, here's a reason, and believed it. This is what your mind does every day. It takes fragments of experience and weaves them into stories with beginnings, middles, and ends, because stories give comfort. They explain why things happen. They give meaning to chaos. They give you villains to hate and heroes to admire, often yourself. But above all, they help you feel that life makes sense. That's why conspiracy theories are so powerful, not because they're factual, but because they're satisfying. They tie complex, ambiguous realities into a neat little bow. A global pandemic? Too random. Too terrifying. But a secret cabal controlling events from the shadows? That, at least, gives structure. It's not the truth we crave, it's the narrative. Even memory falls victim to this bias. Contrary to popular belief, memories aren't stored like video recordings. They're reconstructed every time we recall them, and each time they shift subtly to fit the story we now believe. This is how two people can remember the same event so differently. Each person has edited the past to fit their current narrative about who they are, what happened, and why it mattered. Perhaps the most subtle trap is the personal story, the internal monologue you repeat daily about your identity. I'm bad at math. I always attract the wrong people. I'm not the kind of person who takes risks. These aren't facts. They're stories your brain has built from selected evidence and reinforced over years. Change the story, and you change yourself, but your brain resists. Because stories are stable, they offer certainty in an uncertain world. So next time you find yourself assigning meaning to someone's behavior or rehashing an old memory, pause and ask, am I seeing the truth or just telling myself a story that feels true? Because often the brain's most persuasive lies are the ones told in the voice of reason. Imagine standing at a crosswalk, waiting for the signal to change. You press the button once, then again, maybe a third time. Deep down, you know it probably doesn't speed things up, but you press it anyway. It gives you a sense of control, a feeling that you're doing something. That feeling, however, is often nothing more than an illusion. This phenomenon is known as the illusion of controller brain's deeply rooted belief that we influence outcomes far more than we actually do, and it's everywhere. In a famous experiment, psychologist Ellen Langer gave participants the chance to buy lottery tickets. Some were allowed to choose their own numbers, others were given random tickets. Later, when offered money to sell their tickets back, those who had picked their own numbers demanded significantly more money. The tickets were equally random, the odds were unchanged. But the mere perception of choice inflated their sense of control and value. This illusion isn't just confined to games of chance. In everyday life, we believe our efforts directly shape outcomes, even in situations governed mostly by luck, timing, or external forces. We take credit for our successes. I worked hard, I planned well, and downplay the role of fortune. Conversely, we blame ourselves for failures beyond our control. I should have known, I could have done more, reinforcing a distorted sense of agency. But why does the brain cling to this lie? Because control is comforting. From an evolutionary standpoint, believing you can influence your environment even when you can't can be adaptive. It motivates action, fosters resilience, and reduces anxiety. A primitive human who believed they could control the weather through rituals might have been wrong, but also more likely to survive a harsh season by preparing excessively. The belief itself had value, regardless of its truth. But in modern life, this illusion can become dangerous. Gamblers often convince themselves they have a system that can beat the odds, leading to ruinous behavior. Investors overestimate their ability to time the market, making impulsive decisions. Even in health, patients may attribute recovery to an ineffective treatment simply because their belief in it made them feel proactive. The brain, desperate to find cause and effect, stitches together false patterns from coincidence. It doesn't stop there. Think about how you perceive your own behavior. Studies show that when people are asked to press a button and hear a sound a few moments later, they often perceive the time gap as shorter because their action caused the sound. The mind compresses time to reinforce the sense of control. Even temporality, it turns out, can be warped to preserve the illusion. There's a subtle power in recognizing this lie. When you accept that not everything is within your grasp, you become more realistic, more adaptive, and ironically more in control of what truly matters. You stop wasting energy on the uncontrollable and focus it on thoughtful action, critical reflection, and meaningful choice. The brain may whisper, "You're the one steering the ship," but the seas are vast, the wind's unpredictable, and the ship, well, it may not even be yours. Picture this. You're scrolling through your social media feed and stumble upon a headline that aligns perfectly with what you already believe. You nod in silent agreement. Feels good, doesn't it? Then you see a conflicting headline study, a quote, a dissenting opinion, and instantly your guard goes up. You dismiss it, scoff at the source, or rationalize it away. You've just experienced confirmation bias, perhaps the most pervasive and dangerous cognitive illusion of them all. At its core, confirmation bias is your brain's tendency to seek out, interpret, and remember information in a way that confirms what you already believe while ignoring or distorting anything that challenges it. And it doesn't matter how intelligent or educated you are. If anything, smarter people are often better at rationalizing their biases. This mental shortcut once served a useful purpose. In a world where quick judgments could mean life or death, your ancestors didn't have time to analyze every bit of conflicting evidence. They needed to decide, friend or foe, safe or dangerous, edible or poisonous. The brain evolved to favor coherence over truth, certainty over ambiguity. But in the modern world, that same mechanism leads to tribalism, misinformation, and deep personal blind spots. Consider the famous Weizen selection task. Participants are given a logical rule, say, if a card shows an even number on one side, then the other side must be red. They're shown several cards and asked which ones they need to flip to test the rule. Most people choose the cards that could confirm the rule, not the ones that might falsify it. Even in a structured environment, the brain instinctively looks to prove itself right. This gets worse in emotionally charged contexts. Take politics, for example. If you support policy A, you'll unconsciously favor news stories, statistics, and anecdotes that scrutinize or dismiss those that don't. Even your memory becomes complicit. Studies show people are more likely to recall evidence that supports their beliefs and forget the rest. The brain doesn't just filter the present, it edits the past. And it's not just about the world, it's about you. If you believe you're unworthy of love, your brain will notice every social misstep and ignore every moment of connection. If you believe you're a genius, you'll gloss over mistakes and overinflate praise. In both cases, your self-concept becomes a bubble, reinforced by selective attention and distorted memory. Social media amplifies this bias like gasoline on fire. Algorithms feed you more of what you engage with, confirming your views, validating your fears, and slowly building an echo chamber that feels increasingly like objective reality. The more you see something, the more you believe it, and the more you believe it, the less likely you are to question it. So how do you fight back? Not by trying to be completely unbiased, an impossible task, but by cultivating cognitive humility, the willingness to admit you might be wrong, seek out opposing views, engage with uncomfortable ideas. Practice curiosity instead of certainty. Because the truth is, your brain doesn't want to see reality, it wants to feel safe in its beliefs. And unless you question what you know, you'll never escape the comfortable prison it has built for you. Let's be honest, you probably think you're a bit smarter than average, maybe more insightful, perhaps a better driver, a more reasonable thinker, a nicer person. It's not arrogance, it's just how things feel. And statistically speaking, it's almost certainly a lie. Welcome to the self-deception trap, the brain's relentless campaign to protect your ego by inflating your self-image, minimizing flaws, and weaving a narrative where you come out just a bit ahead of everyone else. Psychologists call this the Lake Wobegon effect, named after a fictional town where all the women are strong, all the men are good-looking, and all the children are above average. It sounds like a joke, but it's disturbingly close to how most people perceive themselves. In studies, over 90% of participants rate themselves as above-average drivers. Students believe they are more honest than their peers. Employees think they work harder. And no, it doesn't level out at the top. CEOs and doctors fall into the same trap. Why does the brain do this? Because your sense of self is fragile. It's a house of cards built from experience, memory, feedback, and most of all, stories. And those stories must remain intact for you to function with confidence, hope, and agency. If you were to truly confront all your limitations, mistakes, and contradictions without softening filters, it would be psychologically devastating. So the brain lies. It downplays failures. That interview didn't go well, but it wasn't the right job anyway. It reframes rejection. They didn't respond because they were intimidated. It inflates virtues. I might get angry sometimes, but it's only because I care so deeply. And it compares downward. At least I'm not like those people. This self-enhancement serves a purpose. People who believe in their own competence tend to take more risks, persevere through difficulty, and recover more quickly from setbacks. Confidence, even unjustified confidence, can be a survival tool. But there's a darker side. When self-deception goes unchecked, it breeds entitlement, narcissism, and stagnation. You stop growing because you believe there's nothing to fix. You alienate others because you can't see your own faults. And perhaps worst of all, you become blind to the very patterns that cause your pain. Take interpersonal conflict, for example. Most people view themselves as the reasonable party. I'm just trying to communicate clearly. They're the one who gets emotional. Or in performance reviews, my manager doesn't see my value. Rarely do we ask, what might I be missing? Or, how am I contributing to this dynamic? Even memory joins in on the self-deception. We remember ourselves in the best light, our intentions noble, our actions justified. We edit our past to support our current self-image, turning messy realities into heroic tales or unfair tragedies. Your brain is the director of a biopic in which you always play the misunderstood protagonist. But here's the twist. Beneath the lies is a yearning for truth. Somewhere inside, a quieter voice asks harder questions. Why did that really happen? What am I avoiding? What if I'm the problem? Listening to that voice doesn't mean destroying your self-worth. It means strengthening it, building a self-image rooted not in fantasy, but in courage, honesty, and humility. The goal isn't to tear yourself down. It's to see yourself clearly enough to grow. Because the most dangerous lies are the ones we tell ourselves. So here we are, after unraveling the comforting lies your brain whispers in the dark, the illusions of perception, the lure of story, the myth of control, the shield of bias, and the polished mask of self-deception. It's enough to make anyone uneasy. But maybe that's the point. The brain evolved not to reveal reality, but to filter it, soften it, shape it into something survivable. And in doing so, it became not just an organ of thought, but a master craftsman of belief. These lies aren't always malicious. In fact, they're often beautiful. They keep you moving. They help you love, hope, create, and dream. They are the scaffolding that holds your identity together. But they are still lies. And the cost of never questioning them is steep. You walk through life half-blind, convinced you see the whole picture. You build relationships on assumptions, make decisions on faulty evidence, and judge others with flawed standards, all while fiercely defending your version of truth. The danger isn't in being wrong, it's in not knowing that you are. So what now? This isn't a call to abandon belief, but to hold it lightly, to trade certainty for curiosity, to embrace discomfort as the price of clarity. The most powerful thing you can say isn't, I know it's, maybe I'm wrong, because in that moment, your mind opens, the illusion cracks, and truth, whatever shape it takes, has a chance to enter. Look again at the world around you, the people you disagree with, the emotions you've suppressed, the stories you've repeated about who you are. What if they're not quite true? What if your brain, for all its brilliance, has been painting shadows and calling them light? There's beauty in not knowing, freedom in unlearning, and power in asking the forbidden question, what if I've been wrong all along? Because only then, when the lies begin to tremble, can something more honest, more whole, and more deeply human take root.